All of our socials can be found at KBLA 1580. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Everything at KBLA 1580. Let me also invite you to download our app at KBLA 1580. Download the app and take us with you anywhere in the world and listen to us in real time, no matter where you are, but only if you download the app right now at KBLA 1580. Should you miss us any day in real time, check out the podcast of this program by going to the app, the website, Anchor, Spotify, Apple, so many places to get the podcast of this program and listen at your leisure should you miss us any day in real time. But I am delighted to have you along live with us today for the next 3 hours. By the way, you can also watch the live stream of this program by tapping the KBLA TV icon on your app or by going to our YouTube page. Let me also invite you to follow me on Facebook and Instagram at The Real Tavis Smiley and get Twitter updates at Tavis Smiley. All that said, a great show on tap for you today. In our second hour, now more than ever, America is being forced to have a real conversation, a reckoning, in fact, about white supremacy and white domination. But have you ever wondered where the notion of whiteness comes from? What does it actually mean? What is whiteness for? John Biewen of the Center for Documentary Studies at Duke University and host of the popular podcast Seen on Radio joins us in hour 2 for a conversation about the roots and meaning of whiteness in a democracy called America. In our third hour, it's a house party today. There is a house party reboot coming to theaters in January, produced by LeBron James and Maverick Carter, starring actors Tosin Cole and Jacob Lattimore. But we have the originals, Kid and Play. Christopher Reed and Christopher Martin join us today in hour 3. Conversation with Kid and Play on the eve of this new reboot coming out again, produced by LeBron James and his partner Maverick Carter. I look forward to having Christopher join us today in hour 3. But in this first hour today,
in order to make America great and glorious again, I am tonight announcing my candidacy for President of the United States. Thank you. All of you. Thank you. So many incredible friends and family here tonight. It's such a beautiful thing. Some people say, how do you speak before so many people all the time? When there's love in the room, it's really easy. If you want to know the truth. It's really not. You ought to try it sometime. Together we will be taking on the most corrupt forces and entrenched interests imaginable. Our country is in a horrible state. We're in grave trouble. This is not a task for a politician or a conventional candidate. This is a task for a great movement that embodies the courage, confidence, and the spirit of the American people. This is a movement. This is not for any one individual. This is a job for tens of millions of proud people working together from all across the land and from all walks of life, young and old, black and white, Hispanic and Asian, many of whom we have brought together for the very, very first time. If you look at the numbers, if you look at what's happened with Hispanic And just look at what's happening. This is a party that has become much bigger, much stronger, much more powerful, can do much more good for our country. This is a job for grandmothers and construction workers, firefighters, builders, teachers, doctors, and farmers who cannot stay quiet any longer. You can't stay quiet any longer. You're angry about what's happening to our country. Our country is being destroyed before your very eyes. It's a job for every aspiring young person and every hard-working parent, for every entrepreneur and underappreciated police officer who is ready to shout for safety in America. The police are being treated so badly. These are great people that can straighten out the crime. They're the ones that know how to do it. We have to give them back their respect and their dignity. This will not be my campaign. This will be our campaign all together.
Katrina Vanden Heuvel, here we go again.
We go again. It reminds me, though, Tavis, of the inaugural speech, the American carnage, but that was very bleak, and that was grim, and that was, this is, it's delusional in the sense that the Republican Party doesn't offer any answers to the people, many of the people he speaks of, firefighters, bartenders, workers, African Americans, Latinos, but they are making a push for it. And there's a sense of, what is this, the movement? All of it's pretty insidious. Mm-hmm. It's dangerous. And those who write him out, it's no time for complacency, because I think, as John Nichols writes, you got that 35-40% base, those who might watch Donald Trump shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and still stand by him, with him. And I think the forces you're going to hear in the next segment on your show of white supremacy, of anger funneled into movements of danger, of violence, is something that needs to be addressed and attacked nonviolently. So I think it's a dangerous moment. Listen, the midterms, amazingly, the Democrats defied history and the odds. Going to control the Senate. We don't know yet by what margin. The House will vote Republican, very narrow margin, making it deliciously difficult for whoever is the Speaker to handle that fractious caucus. But it was a moment, it seems to me, this past election, which is still going on, obviously Georgia, to think big and to go bold for the Democrats. We can talk about what that means, but to really show it's a party of governing, which is such a boring word, but a real word to improve the condition of people's lives. And the Republicans talk a game, but you got to walk the walk.
Yeah. We're live streaming, as I said a moment ago. We just started a couple weeks ago, and people are loving being able to watch as well as listen. This camera can't get this close enough, or even if you could, you couldn't read my handwriting. I want to show you how.
I know that problem.
I'm showing the camera how simpatico you and I are. The very first word of which you cannot read that I was writing down as Donald Trump was speaking says delusional. You can't read that even if the camera got close enough because my handwriting. Can you see it? My handwriting is horrible. I think they zoomed in on it.
I'm on a phone. Next time I'll look for it. But my handwriting, listen, the handwriting may be hard to read and decipherable, but delusional is a known quantity, and I think there's a lot of delusion.
Yeah.
And a feeling like they pulled it off or Trump is back. But boy, is it a fractious fighting party. And there are lots of divisions. But I'm more interested in what the movements can do, the Democratic Party, the progressive left wing of the Democratic Party, to show that there's a real alternative. And, he's going on with the tropes about the police.
Sure.
Of course, there's respect and dignity. Must be for all. But, that in on that as much as was understood. What struck me in the polls, Tavis, was how much the gun issue played among a younger generation. Mm-hmm. And that was important in the contest for public safety. Yeah.
Just getting started in our conversation for the hour with Katrina Vanden Heuvel. Again, I wrote down the word delusional about 5 seconds before she uttered it because both of us are on the same page. When we come forward, I want to come right back to that point about delusional, because what I regarded as delusional in that speech last night from Donald Trump is the way he framed and defined the Republican Party in this moment. There's absolutely no way that the party that he thinks exists in fact, exist. He's talking about an expansive party, a party that has grown, not a party that has shrunk. I mean, he's completely delusional about the GOP as he sees it. And I want to unpack that with Katrina and a great deal more. I saw the piece by John Nichols this morning, brilliant piece in The Nation, as is always the case, by the way, as you well know, or should know. Katrina Vanden Heuvel is editorial director and publisher of The Nation, and I'm always honored to have her on this program. She writes regularly for The Washington Post and checks in as often as she can with us, and what a great day. No better person to lead this program with today, talking about the big announcement from Donald Trump last night. Katrina Vanden Heuvel on KBLA Talk 1580.
Be sure to like and follow Tavis Smiley at The Real Tavis Smiley and get Twitter updates at Tavis Smiley. The conversation continues when we come forward.
The Los Angeles Urban League helps African American and others in underserved communities achieve true social parity, economic self-reliance, and civil rights. For over 100 years, Los Angeles Urban League has ensured our communities have access to careers with living wages, opportunities to start and grow businesses, and clear pathways to personal and professional growth. Programs like BizCamp, Construction Career Academy, Spa Business Ready, and B-Warp. The Black Wealth Attainment and Retention Program are examples of the ongoing events designed to make our centennial mission to rebuild Black Wall Street right here in LA a reality. To sign up for our newsletter or to support the Los Angeles Urban League with your time, talent, and donations, visit laul.org. That's laul.org. The Los Angeles Urban League is a proud sponsor of Urban Family Focus, Saturdays at 7 a.m. on KBLA Talk 1580.
At Cedars-Sinai, we're honored to be named the #1 hospital in California and the #2 hospital in the nation in U.S. News and World Report's Best Hospital. So proud to be named #1 in 6 specialties in Los Angeles. Thank you to our physicians, nurses, academic leaders, and thousands of other team members who bring their best to Cedars-Sinai every day. Learn more about our top-ranked care at cedars-sinai.org.
It's Pro Time, which means at Lowe's, you're invited to enjoy a Lowe's Pro Happy Hour. Kick back with free Pepsi-Cola drinks and Frito-Lay snacks. Plus, earn 3 times bonus points per dollar on purchases of select Pepsi products. Come into Lowe's and get the full MVP treatment at Pro Happy Hour on November 17th from 2 to 5 p.m. While supplies last. Bonus points offer valid 10/27 through 12/8. Calculated before taxes and fees after applicable discounts, if any. See Lowes.com/L/Pro Loyalty terms.
At Target, Black Friday deals are happening right now. Save on the hottest gifts to get ahead this holiday, like must-have toys, the latest tech, and incredible offers to get your home holiday ready. You'll discover new Black Friday deals each week in stores and at Target.com. And make holiday shopping easier than ever using free drive-up, free order pickup, and same-day delivery. Get low prices and great deals so you can holiday your way. Only at Target. Exclusions apply.
Let's unpack a little bit more with Tavis Smiley. Right now.
We continue our conversation right now with Katrina Vanden Heuvel, the editorial director and publisher of The Nation, regular columnist for The Washington Post. So, Katrina, back to that point, we both used the word delusional again. How did you process his defining, his framing the GOP as he sees it in this moment?
Well, he has a tendency, as we know, and a proclivity to believe what he wants to believe. It's all about Trump. So the kind of delusional quality is he's not looking beyond what is clear from this election, which is, he was a clear liability in competitive 2022 House races. And he turned what would have been a modest but solid Republican majority into, at best, a razor-thin one. So, he's not looking at the fact that this year's House races overwhelmingly suggest that conforming the party to Trump's vision is an electoral dead end. What worries me, Tavis, though, is Trumpism. Good news, I think, from this election was that there were, not good news, but election deniers were elected. But very few led with that. They very few, even the guy in New Hampshire, Bolduc, who was an election denier, moved forward. And so did Kari Lake after throwing things into the fire. But it's going to be a battle inside the Republican Party. It's going to be fractious, to use a polite word. And Trump is evading that. He's averting his eyes from that, though he is at the top of the heap or the bottom of the heap. And we'll have to see what DeSantis, other forces within the party. But I suspect this call for movement is building on this idea that he's now part of the right-wing extremist evangelical movement, which wasn't so clear in 2016 when a lot of those forces distrusted him and had to sign up Pence and the judges. But it's a dangerous moment, and I think complacency, even though the Democrats truly averted a red wave, but need to be vigilant moving forward.
Yep. I've made the point any number of times in my career, in speeches and conversations, that movements just don't happen, as you well know.
Absolutely.
I put it this way. You start with a moment, and that moment can build momentum, and the momentum can turn to movement. But movements are very rare in our society, frankly. But you start with moment, then momentum, and then movement. As I heard Donald Trump invoke that word movement last night a couple of times, I saw that as a code word. I saw him playing to a particular part of the party by saying we need to build a movement. How did you unpack the word movement when you heard him employ it last night?
Well, there's a long tradition of extremist right, white supremacist movements, hate movements in this country. And he's calling on that tradition. I mean, many of those who came to the Capitol January 6th thought of themselves as part of a movement, has its media, has its money, has its forces, and is a kind of alternate reality, talking delusion. But it's real, and it has been exposed. If there's any glimmer of light in these last years, Tavis, first of all, there's a country that is more aware of democracies. What does it mean? The right to vote, we've got to fight for that. The right to be heard, the right not to be attacked, hurt. But the right to have a voice has been something I think that many people have not faced up to. Now you got this movement, Trump calling on, but it's out there, and but he's not a movement. As you said, movements created artificially are not really movements. We have in this country, Black Lives Matter, Fight for 15, gun violence movements against gun violence. But what Trump is talking about, I think, is forcing together people in a not expansive, but rather inclusive, small, and kind of, to be honest, trying to speak to an expansive Republican Party when, in fact, it's shrinking.
Yeah.
Its base is shrinking. It's older. It's a demography issue. And so much of the dark money, the big money that's come into our politics in these last years has been designed to fight the wave that is coming. That doesn't mean one expects Latinos to vote for the Democratic Party, but it does mean one has to fight for those votes and rebut what Trump is saying, which is built not on an affirmative, expansive vision of America, but locked down, closed up, carnage, fear.
Let me ask you whether or not, first of all, I couldn't help but consider last night that he announced his run for presidency in the same location where those stolen papers were recovered.
Oh, the stolen. Have you followed the stories? It's so Trumpian. I really believe this is the case, that he wanted those papers so he could boast and show people at dinner parties that he had the property of the government. What Trump is sitting around reading declassified archives to improve the security of our. But I will say, I did write a column on the eve of the election. It was posted at the Washington Post Tuesday morning about the fact that January 6th will forever be seared into our minds as January 6th. But January 6th, 1941. Franklin Roosevelt gave the Four Freedoms speech. January 6th, freedom of speech, freedom of worship, freedom from want, freedom from fear. And I think we need to remember that this is a resilient country. And what we saw, it seems to me, in the elections was a rejection, not a pro-blue way. The extremism, the hate, trying to take this country back, and that can be unpacked, whether it's the abortion issue, which really roused people, or the fear of white supremacy. This is all kind of fear, but it was fear that took its aim at an extremism that a lot of Americans don't want as part of their lives, their kids' lives, their families' lives.
Yeah, I'm not going to keep turning my notes to the camera so people can read all my stuff. I saw that piece you wrote, and I wanted to ask you about it, so I'm glad you commented on it because it was a brilliant piece, I thought, that referenced a different January 6th. Let me ask you whether or not you think, I raised this issue yesterday with one of our guests, but I want to ask Katrina Vanden Heuvel this question, now that we're on this side of the speech and saw what he had to say last night in his big announcement, whether or not you think that his jumping this early, we know why he's doing it for a couple of reasons, but whether or not you think his jumping this early will, in fact, be effective in boxing others out.
It's a very, very good question. I don't have any special insight. I think, Trump doesn't have anything else to do. And he's ready to drive this for the next months. But I don't think it'll box people out. I think people are watching, thinking. The more Trump attacks a few people may be helpful for them. But he is, I agree with my colleague, John Nichols, I do think he begins with a base. Yeah. And that's going to be hard to break open. But you know what? You know this, Tavis. I mean, a week in politics used to be a year. Yeah. A week in, now with social media and all kinds of things. It is true he's beyond the Teflon candidate. He seems like a titanium cobalt crypto candidate. But it's, things can break, and there's there's investigation, there's legal action underway.
We'll come back to that in a second. I want to talk about how these indictments might play out if they come while he's campaigning. And I suspect at least one or two will. We'll come to that in a second. But I want to push back ever so lovingly and gently because I adore you, as you well know. But I want to push back.
No, please.
On this notion of his attacking other people that might be helpful to them. I see it differently. When you go back to the campaign that Trump won for the White House the first time around, his attacks on people are deadly. I mean, let me remind you. Little Marco? I mean, that phrase, Little Marco?
I know.
Low energy Jeb Bush, low energy? I mean, when he called Elizabeth Warren Pocahontas, I mean, this guy knows how to pick a phrase.
He does.
And his attacks are
deadly. He really
deadly.
Does. No. Yeah. But let me first of all suggest to your listeners that the great moment, and I'm no fan of Chris Christie, was when he took down Marco Rubio in one of the debates. I mean, Marco Rubio was like the Wicked Witch of the East, blubbering on the floor. You're right, though. Trump has an unerring instinct to find the target, lace it, and go at it. Now, but let's think about this. He's no longer the comeback kid. He's no longer fresh from, though it was a few years earlier, The Apprentice. By the way, the line he uses, "You're fired," is reported to have come from George Steinbrenner of Baseball Life. Didn't even do an original. But, he's not comeback anymore. He's not, the kind of phenomenon. He is a spectacle and always will be. And I suspect some people like that because, let's be honest, some politics can be boring, but it's about lives in the balance. But so you may be right. I have to say I don't have a great fix, and I think it's early, even in our nano-charged politics to know who's going to come out of the woodwork, who's there on the stage now, who may wait and decide this is not the time, and there's some younger people. Let's not forget Mr. Trump is, 70? I mean, the whole discussion of age is skewed now, but he's not in good health. I mean, I don't think he's drinking vegan smoothies every day, but he is a germaphobe and a teetotaler.
Yeah, that he is. When we come forward, I got to get some news and traffic and sports out of the way. When we do that, we'll come back to this conversation with the editorial director and publisher of The Nation magazine. I don't miss reading it, Katrina Vanden Heuvel, and she made a couple points already that I want to go back and give her a chance to sort of unpack for us, because one of the points she made, as always, she's so brilliant, not a lot of folks have talked about, and that is this notion of the way that guns, particularly with young people, played out in the midterms. You combine the data that says that guns were a real issue for many, certainly white male voters, in the midterms. You combine that with Trump calling for a movement last night. You see how combustible this could be. I want to come back to that and a few other points about what Donald Trump had to say last night. He's back, ladies and gentlemen. Like it or low that he's back. The media loved it. All the networks took it last night. So it's on and popping, as they say. More with Katrina Vanden Heuvel when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about. Good thing we've got 3 hours. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
I'm Mike Moore, and here's the latest from the Black Information Network. NATO held an emergency meeting today after a missile strike inside Poland near the Ukrainian border killed 2 people. President wasn't fired from Russia. A NATO source said earlier today that Biden has told allies the projectile in question was a Ukrainian air defense missile. Still, NATO member Poland says it may invoke Article 4, which calls for formal discussions among allies and could lead to a request to strengthen air defenses in the region. In California, Long Beach will have a black mayor. For the first time in its history, current Vice Mayor Rex Richardson has been elected mayor, defeating City Councilwoman Susie Price, who conceded on Tuesday. Richardson leads Price by more than 8,100 votes. He'll be sworn in December 20th. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
Starting with the City Casting, 2 right lanes are still closed. 5 south of past Campo Highway. Traffic stops at Vista del Lago Road. Also got the City in Fontana on the Rapids at 15 north towards the 210 east. 1 lane blocked on the rapid traffic is slow in the transition. In Hawthorne, there was a crash in lanes 405 northbound for Rosecrans Avenue. That got pushed to the shoulder. Still pretty tough on the 110 freeway. And in Anaheim Hills, get a report of a vehicle stalled 91 westbound for Imperial Highway. Looks like that's stalled in the left-hand lane. Watch for traffic break to get back to the right shoulder.
NetSpend All Access. Get the mobile banking account with perks that add up. Banking services provided by an account established by IC. Deposit account opening is subject to registration and ID verification. Terms and costs apply.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The #1 girls high school basketball player in the nation is going to USC. 6'2" guard Juju Watkins of Sierra Canyon High School in Chatsworth signed a national letter of intent to attend USC in the fall of 2023. This young lady can ball. She was the starting guard for the USA basketball 17 and under team when they won 2 gold medals. She's one of only 5 high school basketball players in the country with a name, image, and likeness endorsement deal with Nike. Watkins, who grew up in Watts, is the great-granddaughter of Ted Watkins Sr., the legendary LA civil rights activist in the 60s. The Clippers lose by 2 in Dallas last night, 35 for Dallas forward Luka Doncic. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. This sports report was brought to you by MVP Accident Attorneys. When it comes to your settlement, we're slam dunk. Call 833-MVP-WINS or check their website at themvp.com for a free case review.
When you're the victim of a car accident, hiring the right law firm can be the difference between a rewarding settlement and striking out. Call the pros at MVP Accident Attorneys at 833-MVP-WINS for your free consultation.
Call me your MVP.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Maisha Cairo here for JP Morgan Chase's Advancing Black Wealth Tour, where KBLA's very own Lynn Richardson was a keynote speaker. Here's what Lynn had to say when asked what the top 3 tips were for someone beginning their journey to financial freedom.
The first one would definitely actually be to write what it is that you want. The things that I wrote when I was broke, down, under the ground, didn't know how I was going to make it, are happening today. And they're actually bigger than I ever thought. The dreams that I had, it didn't seem possible, but I had the wherewithal to write it. Thoughts disentangle themselves when they pass through your fingertips. So when you see what it is that you want, it becomes more real. The second thing is to speak what you seek until you see what you say. Get rid of haters, naysayers, blockers, and crab barrel and pullers. Don't get mad at us. Just detach and find your crew. And the third thing is to get started at JP Morgan Chase. And get all of those accounts that you need to save, to spend, and to pay your bills.
This Sunday and every Sunday is the African Marketplace and Drum Circle Community Market. Get free groceries, essential resources, and buy black from local merchants of arts, beauty, custom black merchandise, and more. Choose from a wide variety of cuisines, custom-made clothing, jewelry, Essence of Africatown at Lamert Park every Sunday from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. Join the drum circle, dance, enjoy live performances, connect with other conscious black people. Experience black excellence every Sunday in Africatown at Lamert Park. You can find us on Degnan Boulevard near Vernon and Crenshaw in the heart of Africatown at Lamert Park. That's the African Marketplace and Drum Circle Community Market. Join us for music, shopping, food, and fun this and every Sunday. Support black businesses, recycle black dollars, and feed your soul. The African Marketplace and Drum Circle Community Market every Sunday in Africatown at Lamert Park. Brought to you by Africatown Enterprise and the African Village Vendors Association.
Less BS per broadcast. Fewer microaggressions per megawatt. KBLA Talk 1580.
Katrina Vandenhoeven was our guest in this hour. Excuse me, I'm Tavis Smiley trying to get some tea down my pipes. Katrina Vandenhoeven was our guest, I should say, in this hour. From The Nation magazine, editorial director and publisher. Delighted to have her on in this hour talking about the big announcement last night from Donald Trump. He is back. Of course, you know that already. It's trending all over the place. Katrina, you said before we went to news and sports and traffic that Trump is a spectacle. Indeed, he is a spectacle. But more to the point, he is a media spectacle. And as one who is iconic in the media space, I really want to get your take on the mistakes you think the media made the last time around, and whether or not they've learned anything vis-a-vis covering Donald Trump this time around.
Well, we're going to see, right? I mean, I've written too many columns about the media malpractice of Trump coverage. Last night, I think MSNBC did not cover his speech live. Everywhere else did. The guy thrives. Trump thrives on attention. That's what he dreams of, lives for, fights for. And I think it needs to be, every news organization worth its salt is covering, quote, democracy, has a democracy desk if they can afford it, this, that. There's more awareness of what Trump and Trumpism means than there was in 2016, right? So may that inform those media outlets which have a responsibility. I think holding accountable those, whether it's private or public, but holding the powerful accountable for their delusional statements, their false statements, their wise statements is, part of the media basics. But it was not pretty. You still remember him coming down the escalator.
Sure.
And from that moment, it was a race. And we know, we reported on it, Tavis. I mean, Les Moonves of CBS, who's had other problems since saying about Trump that he may be bad for this country, but he's great for CBS. A lot of news coverage is for profit. And news is often a cog in a corporate structure which has regulatory interests in Washington. So that has to factor in, too. But I do think there's far more awareness of the need to rethink and redo as we move forward some of the coverage.
Let me play devil's advocate just for a second, because you and I are simpatico on this. We agree on this. And I have been just so beyond chagrined at the way my colleagues covered this race the last time around. I mean, Donald Trump was just given a pass. And to your point,
there was some good coverage.
I
always
some.
I've always thought, God, think of John Edwards. Remember John?
Yeah, of course.
So, but he spoke of 2-3 Americas. And this country is divided, but I'm thinking more that there are 2-3 medias, right? I mean, there's tabloid, and by the way, Mr. Murdoch has shown again that he values the green, not the Green Party, but the green, and he's disavowed Trump, which is a measure of something. But it's not just Fox is in my sense, the outlier. It's the CBS's, et cetera.
So the question I want to pose is, just playing devil's advocate here. This guy, the first time around, was an outsider. Had never run for office. He was a celebrity, and again, the media bent over backwards to give him all this free coverage. Bernie Sanders couldn't get any of that. And Trump ends up being elected president, and I believe that the mainstream media was complicit in electing Donald Trump. That's my view. Here's the question that I want to ask you from a devil's advocate point of view, which is, he's now a former president. If you're MSNBC, for example, last night, and you don't take it live, how do you justify not covering a former president who is running a game for the White House? How do you justify not covering him this time around?
Well, they didn't go live. But certainly they covered. They certainly discussed the speech. There were clips. There is a difference between full frontal coverage and they didn't ignore it. That's a fantasy as well, to say Trump isn't. And there has been, as you know, attempts to no Trump coverage. Someone tried that for a week. I mean, it's a gimmick, but it's not reality. I wanted to say, though, what he did last night with the movement stuff, Tavis, he's trying to position himself as an anti-establishment candidate. This is why I'm saying he's no longer the comeback anti-establishment candidate. He's a former president, as you note well. You mentioned Sanders. I think just briefly the media coverage of Sanders was as abhorrent and atrocious, much of it, the mainstream. buying into a lot of myths about Bernie Sanders. And I do think that the future of our politics, and too often the media use populism as a right-wing term, there is a multiracial, progressive populism on offer. And many of those candidates did pretty well in these last days, winning seats in Congress, a younger generation of But you're right. He is now and should be treated as a former president and not given a pass.
Exactly. That's
ways.
That's my view. Let me go to the point you made earlier that I really want to give you a chance to unpack for us, because I haven't seen a lot about it, but I think, again, it's combustible. It's dangerous when you combine the data that we've seen, which is unassailable, about the way that guns played or showed up in the midterms, and Trump calling for a movement. We know what happens when Donald Trump calls for a movement. January the 6th happens. So talk to me about the data that we've not paid attention to about these guns.
Well, but this is, I find, kind of astonishing, and it has not been unpacked. The CNN exit polls reported that about as many voters called gun policy, this was 11%, the most important issue to their vote, as crime. And they voted 6. And the younger generation, the numbers are being unpacked, but maybe for the young generation that voted 2-1 for Democrats, school shootings may seem more of a threat than the slogan of the Black Lives Matter movement, a great multiracial demonstration movement that was peaceful, that has gotten so, whacked by so many. But I think the gun issue is one that has a movement behind it and has grown and appeals, the fight to have a common sense gun policy, as opposed, by the way, my colleague again, John Nichols, covered Ron Johnson in the Mandela-Barnes race. Talking the portrayal of crime, guns, through a racist prism was up there with Willie Horton. Your listeners may remember the famous Lee Atwater, stuff during the Dukakis, George H.W. And by the way, George H.W. gets a pass as a moderate Republican. But remember, these strands have run through for decades. And what we're seeing with Trump is we may see the emergence of a moderate Republican Party, what that means, but it's not that. It's not that right now, and it has all the attributes.
So the other thing we saw Trump say last night, again, we teed this up but didn't really unpack it. Let me come to it right now. And that is that play that he made hard last night for Law and Order, the whole police stuff. How did you read his? I knew. I'm sitting watching, and I'm waiting to see how long it's going to take to get to the police line, because I know there's a police line in this speech, and he laid on it last night. How did you read it?
It was clever, I have to say. I mean, it was odious in the way he kind of pandered to police. They get caught up in these, but I think he just, that was part of this race, Tavis, right? I mean, this last election, the Republicans thought they would do better. But in my state and my city, New York, boy, the tough on crime, tough on law and order is played up. I do think the Democrats need a narrative and need a coherent kind of way to do public safety. People care about public safety, but all of this, the defund the police. Okay, we've moved on. The Republicans don't think so, but very few Democrats use that. No one really in their campaigns. So I do think there's a need for a new narrative. On the other hand, it didn't play well the way the Republicans framed it. And, Trump, it just doesn't read really reality-wise when he talks about it.
When we come forward here, I'm looking at my clock now. I don't want to give her 45 seconds to get started on this, because she's an expert on a lot of things, including this. But when one thinks of Donald Trump, one also thinks of another guy named Vladimir Putin. And we saw this story yesterday. The news broke, in fact, while I was on the air yesterday, about this missile that had landed inside of Poland. A couple of folk were killed. Initial reports were that it was a Russian missile. Say that fast 3 times. You heard in the news report at the bottom of the hour, President Biden has said it wasn't a Russian missile. I don't know what the story is on that, but I want to get Katrina's take on this, because the one thing that Katrina has said every time she comes on this program is her concern about NATO and her concern about what happens if Russia moves beyond Ukraine in this fight. And so I don't think the evidence suggests as yet they've moved beyond Ukraine, but a NATO state was hit yesterday. There was a missile from somewhere that dropped inside Poland yesterday. Poland is a NATO state, and Poland is now considering whether or not they're going to invoke certain articles in the NATO agreement that would pull in all the other NATO nations, including the United States of America, and then this thing gets bigger, it gets uglier, it gets worse. I want to get Katrina Vanden Heuvel's take on that when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Say the quiet part out loud. KBLA Talk 1580.
Black Panther Wakanda Forever scores the highest November debut ever. Maisha Cairo here with your K-Black Minute News, brought to you by Cal Hope. Disney and Marvel Studios' Black Panther Wakanda Forever earned $180 million opening weekend. That's the highest November debut ever, and it ranks as the second highest opener of 2022. It should continue to build momentum with pretty impressive numbers. Fun fact, in 2018, Black Panther had this sequel beat, with $202 million at the box office opening weekend, with a total of $1.34 billion altogether. Do you think Wakanda Forever will do the same?
Life is uncertain. It's okay to feel stressed, anxious, worried, or frustrated. Cal Hope can help. Access Cal Hope's free and secure mental health resources today. Call 833-317-4673 or live chat at calhope.org.
KBLA would like to thank all the businesses that tune into KBLA at work. We celebrate you, your calls to the station, and your overall support. To show our appreciation, we would like to treat your office to a lunch for 10, brought to you by K. Michelle's Kitchen Catering. Open the KBLA Talk 1580 app or log on to KBLA1580.com to be selected for our Office of the Week. We know you are just like our staff, putting in many smart, hard-working hours per week. We just want to say thank you, and we appreciate you. You and your staff deserve lunch on us. Enter your office to win lunch for 10 and be highlighted on KBLA Talk 1580 as our Office of the Week. Open the KBLA app or log on to KBLA 1580 to enter your office today to become the KBLA Talk 1580 Office of the Week, sponsored by K. Michelle's Kitchen Catering.com. Become the KBLA Talk 1580 Office of the Week. This has been a KBLA Talk 1580 community call to action.
The California Crusader newspaper would like to thank all of our subscribers for their support throughout the years, proudly serving the South Los Angeles and South Bay areas for more than 40 years. The California Crusader is a multicultural, black-owned, adjudicated newspaper that focuses on providing in our community. We're constantly looking for ways to assist businesses in our community to connect with our subscribers. We provide low-cost, effective ways to promote your business with our reasonable and affordable advertising rates. You can participate by suggesting, sharing, and submitting your stories on the California Crusader newspaper Community Share Facebook group page, or visit our website at cal-cruise-news.com. That's calcruisenews.com. Then click on the Submit Now button located on the top right corner of the homepage, or text CCN to 42828. Again, text CCN to 42828. The California Crusader newspaper, working together to build a better community for our future. Subscribe today.
Conversations that matter. You're listening to Tavis Smiley on KBLA Talk 1580.
So Katrina Vanden Heuvel, the missile in Poland, what do you think?
Yeah, so the missile in Poland. Let me just tell your listeners, I have a piece at thewashingtonpost.com. It might be time to give diplomacy a chance. President Biden's trying to lower the temperature, as he calls it, as they investigate what happened with this missile, Russian-made missile, which hit Poland and right across the border from Ukraine and killed 2 people. As you noted, Tavis, this could, if it was investigated and turned out to be a Russian hit, Article 4 and 5 of the NATO Charter. 4 is simply to have official discussions about how to proceed. 5 is collective defense, that the United States would join with Europe and its NATO allies in actually defending Ukraine. And I think the barrier, and this is a barbaric war, Russia has shown there's a barbarism in civilian infrastructure. Ukraine may demand $1 trillion to rebuild. So it's how to find a justice for the Ukrainians, but also that diplomacy takes time. And those who say the time isn't right, well, diplomacy takes time and preparation and might start now. The nuclear threat is a very serious one. I mean, I was thinking of how this may be an accidental, miscalculated strike that hit Poland. And if that's the case, you can imagine other miscalculations that might happen as ships, nuclear-armed ships and other things are moving around. This is not to condone, but to understand that there may be a way forward that needs to be thought about. And I think we're seeing the administration divided in an interesting way. General Milley of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, quote, when there's an opportunity to negotiate, when peace can be achieved, seize the moment. It sounds like the progressive, which was taken back at the end of the day, but it was, the Progressive Caucus debacle showed that the bellicose will seek to squelch the calls for peace or negotiation, but the stakes are high. And I think I was struck by Janet Yellen, Treasury Secretary, the other day, who said maybe it was impromptu, but that the best way to end the recession was to end the war. And that struck me as very hard-nosed, but I do think we need some justice. Peace will not be lasting, but we might begin now in light of what we saw yesterday and the dangers of miscalculation and nuclear weapons.
Let me ask you right quick, how you think Joe Biden has handled this from the beginning?
Well, I think he's handled this last incident quite well, but I worry that because of this framework of the national security strategy, this kind of annual doctrine that was released a few weeks ago, there's a view that Russia and China are, enemies. They are not our friends, but they're not. I mean, it's possible to kind of see an ongoing Cold War, which is not about rebuilding our own country, which is not meaning isolationism, but we have a lot of work to do. I think Biden is now, he's been considering the atmosphere in Washington, D.C., and the pressure on him to do more, which is meaning sending more militarization. He's been fairly restrained, but it's a very, very tough. And China, he met with the President of China, Xi, the other day, and there are a lot of issues there. And I think China is considered a far more threatening force economically. Russia was never integrated into our economy in the same way. So there are a lot of issues, but I do think this last day may have shown dangerous. He knows it is, but how very dangerous it is. There's no interest in sending American men and women. I mean, in the polling, there's increasing concern about how much aid, but the idea of sending American men and women is off the chart in terms of negativity.
Yeah, he's been firm about that. He has said repeatedly, as you well know, he's not going to do that under any condition. Our remaining moments with Katrina Vanden Heuvel, when we come forward, we're going to return one last time to this notion of Trumpism that she suggested earlier so concerns her even beyond the big announcement last night, as he termed it, from Donald Trump, that he's running again for the White House. Katrina Vanden Heuvel, our remaining moments with her when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, where we turn red lights to green lights and keep it moving. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 joins you in standing for human rights. The Los Angeles Civil, Human Rights and Equity Department, or LA Civil Rights for short, is focused on reducing bias and injustices while leveling the playing field. LA Civil Rights does this through equity and empowerment, the Office of Racial Equity, hate prevention, upward mobility programming, and youth programming. They convene commissions and advisory councils. The Civil, Human Rights and Equity Department of the City of Los Angeles is led by founding Executive Director Capri Maddox and is breaking new ground for municipal governance. LA Civil Rights oversees citywide initiatives, including the Renew Program, LA Repair Program, and the LA for All campaign. The LA Civil Rights Department believes that the goals of equity and inclusion for all people can be achieved through hard work and collective action. To get involved and be part of the solution, report a civil rights. Get more information. Visit civilandhumanrights.lacity.org. That's civilandhumanrights.lacity.org or call 213-978-1845. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
East West Players brings you the stage play Brothers Paranormal by Prince Gomovilas, directed by Jeff Liu, November 17th through December 11th. After a nationwide increase in sightings of Asian-looking ghosts, two Thai brothers, one from Thailand and one from the American Midwest, struggle to launch a ghost hunting business and are called to the home of an African-American couple displaced from Hurricane Katrina. This suspenseful, humorous, compassionate exploration of the trauma of leaving home, whether crossing the country, the globe, or the other side, is a play for everyone. Get tickets now through December 11th at eastwestplayers.org. eastwestplayers.org.
Let K. Michelle's Kitchen Catering bring you a world of flavors to your next event. For all occasions, book with K. Michelle's Kitchen Catering. Call 310-819-6213 or go to kmichelle.com. Proud sponsor of the Office of the Week. Let K. Michelle's Kitchen Catering cater your next event. Book today at kmichellekitchencatering.com or on Instagram at kmichelles_kitchen catering or on Facebook at kmichelles Kitchen Catering. We look forward to cooking for you soon.
Interrogating your assumptions and expanding your inventory of ideas. Let's get back to Tavis Smiley on KBLA Talk 1580.
Got about 3 minutes left here in conversation with our dear friend, brilliant public intellectual, Katrina vanden Heuvel. Let me turn once again to this notion of Trumpism that you suggested earlier in this conversation, Katrina. As you know, because you referenced it, I am about to have an hour conversation about whiteness in this country and about white supremacy and white domination. What most scares you about Trumpism in the next 24 months as we see Trump aim for the White House once again?
Fusing the hate movements, the white supremacist movements in this country to his campaign, and in essence doing what he's done already, but amping it up, normalizing, mainstreaming, attempting to, and giving kind of delusional hope to these groups that they have a real future in this country. So I worry about that, but I have to say, again, just back to the election very briefly, I watched Governor Whitmer.
Mm-hmm.
Michigan has been a good story this last week, the legislature, the trifecta in a sense. She talked about, governing, not grievance.
Mm-hmm.
Trump is so full of grievances that then fuels others' grievances. But she spoke of being a problem solver and not a culture warrior. And I do think people seek that to some extent, and we've seen that. There's no real problem solving on the Trump Republican side of the aisle. I mean, they talk a good game about being there for working people, middle-class people, but in essence, it's a cover-coded movement of white supremacy, of the very rich who don't have real ties, in a sense, to the fundamentals of this country, and I think that's going to play a role. But Trumpism we can't deny that it will be part of this fractious House coalition. I was just reading two or three of those who participated in different ways in January 6th have been elected, and there are election deniers and how that plays out. So I think there's always within each party fractiousness and debate and how best to this and that, but it's not. I do think there is a civil war that has been muted to a point by this election, and your next visitor may speak to this, but it's still there in this country, the barriers and the divisions.
Yeah. To borrow one of your words, Katrina, this has been a deliciously delectable conversation. And
a delusionally delicious.
Yeah,
no, I mean, it is, there is an element of watching this rejected to a certain extent. Not in any full way, but yes.
Yeah. No, I enjoy you as always. I thank you for coming on. Katrina vanden Heuvel, editorial director, publisher of The Nation magazine. We'll do it again. Take care, Katrina.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Hour 2 of Tavis Smiley. When we come forward, you're listening to KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.